Kira Yuinosuke. It all began that day in Edo Castle. What kind of insult did my lord, Naganori Asano, feel toward you?
Oishi Kuranosuke, indeed, that day is hard to forget. However, I was merely in a position to teach him etiquette. Wasn't Asano Takumi's reaction too excessive?
Call it excessive, but a warrior's honor is more important than anything else. Your words deeply wounded his pride, and the result was the tragedy of being wounded by the blade.
But in doing so, he took his own life and you lost the lord. Can you really say that that one incident alone decided everything?
It may have been a thread of fate, but our actions were not to resist fate, but to liquidate the honor of our lord. The subsequent reformation, our life as Ronin, all began with that one moment.
So, that determination ultimately led to the raid on Kira's residence.
Yes, it was a deliberate and careful process. We gathered information, raised funds, and waited for the right moment.
On the day of the battle, I can't tell you how astonished I was. Witnessing the determination of the 47 of you.
Kira, that day we fought only to fulfill our righteousness as warriors. I can understand how much fear you must have felt, but it could not distract you from your loyalty to your lord.
Why did you have to be so loyal to me when you were trying to kill me?
Loyalty is the soul of a samurai and our way of life. How can we call ourselves samurai if we do not avenge our lord?
That loyalty ultimately cost him his own life, but does he have any regrets?
I have no regrets. We fought for our lord and for our pride as warriors. Whatever the outcome, I believe we made the right choice.
I see, so that is the way of the samurai. But what do you think about how that behavior affected the shogunate?
We did not challenge the authority of the shogunate. However, it is important to note how our actions affected the shogunate and other samurai. We believe that this may have led them to question the ideals of Bushido spirit.
Certainly, your actions have affected many people and made them think about what loyalty means. I have to admit that.
Kira, our destiny changed drastically from that day, but we lived proudly as samurai. That is the best consolation.
Oishi Kuranosuke, your words convey the pride and responsibility of a samurai. That must have supported your actions.
Yes, everything was with the Lord. I hope that our lessons will continue to be passed on to those who follow the path of a warrior.
Time will prove that, but your loyalty will certainly remain in many hearts. Kuranosuke, that incident at Edo Castle, in fact, I had many circumstances. From my standpoint as an instructor of etiquette, I should have been strict.
However, if the harshness goes too far, it can be taken as an insult. Why couldn't they have been more careful?
My position was important to maintain order within the shogunate. It was also necessary to serve as a wake-up call to the feudal lords.
Even though it was a warning bell, Asano Takumi was disgraced by your words and actions. Was there no consideration for that?
Of course, I had intended to be considerate. But sometimes words can lead to misunderstandings. That led to an unfortunate outcome.
How do you explain your subsequent behavior, albeit a misunderstanding? Shouldn't you have shown some consideration after we lost our position?
I was also bound by my position as a member of the shogunate. There were many afflictions that I could not publicly disclose, which may have prevented me from responding appropriately.
Regardless of the anguish, the result was that we became Ronin and were forced to leave our homeland. From your perspective, was that also a necessary sacrifice?
Sacrifice may not be the right word, but in the name of the stability of the shogunate, tough decisions had to be made.
Should a decision that disrespects the honor and livelihood of a single samurai, even for the sake of the stability of the shogunate, really be justified?
Not to say justified, but the politics of the time is always a difficult choice. Besides, you also kept your pride as warriors.
It was because of your continued pride that you were able to strike back. But could this tragedy have been avoided if your actions had been a little different?
Maybe so, but history cannot be told if my actions were also based on what I thought was the best choice for the situation and position at the time.
Even if the choice that seems best makes many enemies?
The goal was not to make enemies. However, those in positions of power are always subject to criticism. That is their destiny.
Although it is fate, isn't it also the way of the samurai to fight against that fate?
It certainly would, but that doesn't always lead to justice. Sometimes you have to look at the bigger picture.
If we say we see the big picture, but that big picture only benefits a few, shouldn't we question the merits of that?
It is a natural right to question the pros and cons. However, when we do, our voices are often not heard by those in power at the time.
That is why we took up our blades and stood up to make our own voices heard. That was our last pride as warriors.
I, too, understand that decision. But it is also true that the action resulted in a lot of regret.
Regret was born, but it made many know and understand our loyalty. It also became part of history.
Even though we have become part of history, the cost in blood is too great. Had we been more forthcoming in our dialogue, we might have had a slightly different future.
Had dialogue been possible, I would have chosen that path. But sometimes the sword had to speak.
The sword speaks. Those words have a deep weight to them. I, too, may have no choice but to respect that choice.
Kira, our Akko Ronin committed seppuku after the raid, which left a deep impression on many people. Time has passed since then, and how the spirit of loyalty is evaluated seems to have changed with the times.
Certainly, the action was a major challenge to the authority of the shogunate, and many people praised it as the ultimate expression of Bushido. At the same time, however, it was a violation of the law and was severely punished by the shogunate.
The punishment was an important lesson for future generations of samurai. The question was how to strike a balance between acting with loyalty and obeying the laws of the shogunate.
It is interesting to see how the lessons learned were passed on to the samurai of later periods. Especially during the turbulent period at the end of the Edo period, there were many occasions when this incident was re-evaluated.
Indeed, it is said that the samurai of the closing days of the Tokugawa shogunate were influenced by our actions. They were torn between their loyalty to the shogunate and their love for their country.
As far as I can tell, your actions have become an icon of sorts and have been featured in much literature and entertainment. This may have helped shape the image of loyalty.
That's right. The story became known as Chushingora and was performed in kabuki and jorori dramas, making it even more memorable.
Cultural influences have been significant. However, not all of these influences were positive. For example, the glorification of revenge also encouraged similar behavior.
I am aware of this point. The debate over how to act in the face of mixed feelings of loyalty and retaliation is still ongoing.
As times have changed, interpretations of Bushido have also changed. Today, there are many different opinions on how that incident should be evaluated.
It is very important to consider how one's behavior as a samurai changes over time. Especially today, the question is how the spirit of Bushido should be lived.
Certainly, Bushido should be thought of in terms of how it contributes to society, not merely as a symbol of loyalty and courage.
From the perspective of contributing to society, the lessons of our actions should have important implications for today's leaders.
That's right, there is much to learn from history. In particular, the tension between power and personal morality is a theme that exists in every age.
And how those tensions are resolved is a question of the qualities of the leaders of that era.
As our case shows, Sometimes extreme choices make history, but the results are not always right.
History teaches us that every action has consequences. The wisdom to recognize this is required.
And with that wisdom, the question is what choices we will make in the future.
Looking back at the past and thinking about the future. This is perhaps the most important thing we should learn from history.
I have to agree with that view. History is a mirror to shape the future.
We hope to see how our actions will be interpreted and utilized by future generations.
We hope that our story will serve as a useful lesson for future generations and lead to better choices.
Kuranosuke, on the day of that raid, I was standing at the end of a long plan. The pressure leading up to that moment and the sense of liberation after its execution are beyond description.
Kuranosuke, I too will never forget that day. The family compound was raided, and I felt deep fear as well as regret.
The raid was not just another act of violence, even for us. It was our duty as samurai and the only way to regain our lost honor.
It is a tragedy for us all, albeit out of duty and honor. Many innocent people were involved. We still feel the weight of it.
I take very seriously the fact that innocent people were involved. However, it was an unavoidable choice that had to be made in order to clear the false accusation against Takumi Asano and restore the honor of the 47 Ronin.
Is it not your one-sided view that I have been falsely accused? I did not directly insult Takumi Asano.
However, your actions disgraced him and ultimately led to his death. There is no escaping that fact.
Facts are subject to different interpretations. I hope you understand my position as well. As a position in the shogunate, I should have been strict.
Too much severity equals violence. As a person on the path of a warrior, there should have been a different approach.
Those words, I feel the same way. I think that they could have chosen not to take revenge and could have tried to solve the problem in other ways.
If time had been turned back, I might have tried that option. But it seemed best to us at the time.
The best choice can result in so much sorrow. Sometimes even a warrior's judgment can be wrong.
It is difficult to admit a mistake. However, it is our responsibility as warriors to learn from our mistakes and apply them to the future.
The word, responsibility, somehow convinces me of this weight. But my emotional wounds are not easily healed.
I have a lot of emotional scars. We lost many comrades and grieved our families. Yet, we chose to be warriors.
The path of a warrior, it is sometimes too heavy a burden to bear. But perhaps we can find something by carrying that weight with us.
There is something to be found, and I have lived my life to this day believing in it. Kira, we will continue to watch what our choices have left in history.
What will remain in history? If it is a lesson learned, it will mean that our suffering was not in vain.
We must continue to tell our story so that our suffering will not be in vain. How will our actions be perceived by future generations?
Our honor will depend on how we receive it. But the most important thing is to tell the truth.
It is our last duty to tell the truth. And what will that truth teach future generations?
Hopefully our stories will be passed on as a lesson to future generations. It will bring meaning to all of this.
Kuranosuke, have you ever thought about the impact of our actions on society during the Edo period?
Of course, Kuranosuke. How the philosophy of Bushido was received by the general populace after the raid is a very important agenda item.
Indeed, our actions were seen as the embodiment of samurai loyalty, and many were impressed by the spirit. But not all of it was accepted positively.
That's right. The value of loyalty was sometimes used as a means to justify irrational behavior.
Our actions were also seen as a challenge to the authority of the shogunate. Wouldn't it be interesting to see how this affected the legal system of the shogunate?
I agree with you on that point. The incident forced the shogunate to review its laws regarding revenge.
In fact, after this incident, regulations on avenging were tightened. This can be said to have played a certain role in maintaining order in samurai society.
Meanwhile, among the populace, our deeds came to be told as heroic tales. It is noteworthy how this affected later kabuki and jorori.
The cultural impact has been enormous. The story, which became known as Chushingora, was widely accepted as a symbol of the samurai spirit of Japan.
It also had a commercial aspect. Chushingora-related products and tourist attractions became popular, affecting the local economy.
Indeed, the area around the Kira residence, where the Ako Ronin made their raid and where we committed seppuku, later became a tourist attraction and was visited by many people.
However, there is also the problem that such tourism does not always accurately convey historical facts.
That point is very important. The commercialization of history sometimes distorts the truth. Our true intentions and the complex background of the time are often omitted.
That is exactly right. It is our responsibility to convey history in a fair and accurate manner.
As this incident demonstrates, one cannot help but feel responsible for how each event in history affects future generations.
And that is the key role of historiography. It is to understand the past and provide knowledge for the future.
As historiography has progressed, our view of the case is changing. New studies and documents are revealing new aspects of the case.
To that end, we must continue to base our discussions on the facts. We need to dig deeper into the depths of what impact we have had.
Kira, I am sure that our revenge will continue to be a much debated event in Japanese history.
We hope that through this discussion, a richer understanding of history will be fostered.
Kuranosuke, a long time has passed, and only now can we talk about it. The real reason why we decided to take revenge that day was not merely loyalty.
Kuranosuke, I can speak again now. It was not just personal anger that made me come down hard on Takumi Asano at that time. There was even more pressure from within the shogunate.
What exactly was the pressure?
There were strict demands for the observance of samurai etiquette, and the case against Asano Takumi was no exception. I was bound by that mission.
Well, that may change our perspective. But then again, that incident took many innocent lives.
I deeply regret this point. In particular, the impact it has had on my subjects and even their families is immeasurable.
We, too, lost many comrades. Each life was sacrificed in the name of loyalty.
I learned that day how heavy a burden loyalty can sometimes be.
Kira, now I ask myself every day if I made the right decision that day.
In built aid, history is always a question of what is right. Our actions will be evaluated as part of that.
It will be appreciated, but it will not bring back what has been lost. In particular, the weight of the sins we have borne will not be lightened by time.
I feel the weight of their sins as well. I used to see them as enemies, but now they seem like friends who bear the weight of history together.
Kira, I feel some relief when you say so. We can only watch and see what our deeds will bring to future generations.
Indeed, we will just have to wait and see. I hope our story will serve as some sort of lesson for future generations.
Kira, thank you for the opportunity to talk like this today. We can't change the past, but I feel we can move forward a little by talking about it.
Gutsuke, I appreciate it as well. It was a heavy talk for both of us, but I hope this brings some peace to our hearts.
Thank you, dear readers, for listening to our story. We hope that this story will leave some kind of lasting impression on you.
And we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for staying with us to the end of this long story. History learns from us and continues into the future.